Hi, so this is my free health question and answer session, which I've been running on Tuesday evenings since the beginning of the coronavirus lockdown. This is actually going to be the last one for a while because next week I will hopefully be away, teaching away, and then taking some holiday. Um, so I won't be doing these for at least another month. But I will be starting them again later on, either later on in August or the beginning of September. So do look out for future ones. And what I am going to talk about for the first few minutes while we wait for people to join is muscular system problems. Over the years I've seen many people with muscular system problems. I use mostly I'm using a combination of macrobiotic understanding and shiatsu understanding. I've given a lot of shiatsu treatments in the last 40 years, and muscular system problems are one of the main problems that come up with people coming for shiatsu treatments. So an awful lot of people with back pains, shoulder pains, knee pains, elbow pains, tennis elbow, ankle pains, sprains, frozen shoulders, headaches, etc., etc. What else? Cramps, spasms, restless legs, which is kind of a nervous muscular system problem, and also fibromyalgia. Fibro means fibrous, my means muscle, and algia means pain, so it's basically pain in the muscles. So I want to talk a little bit about understand a little bit about why these problems happen and what we can do about them. So from a more Western point of view, we can strain muscles, we can overuse muscles, etc. I think what is very useful in the Oriental medicine understanding is, as well as looking at the physical function of organs, to understand how the body works in terms of energy flow. And basically we need chi, ki, prana, or life energy to make everything work in the body. Everything we do, our thoughts, our emotions, our eye movements, our muscular movements, our digestion, making saliva, digestive juices, hormones, everything needs life energy. And the muscles use a lot of life energy. They do a lot of work. And it's very useful to understand these various problems that we get in terms of life energy. And for that, it's very useful to be able to perceive life energy in the body, which we can all learn to do, but particularly if you're training in shiatsu or something like that, then you'll specifically learn how to feel it. I'm still amazed by the close connection between energy and muscular function. And sorry about that. And I'll give you an example that just it still surprises me. So I see a lot of people with frozen shoulders, and actually with frozen shoulders, what I nearly always find is that the problem is not so much in the shoulder joint, but it's more in these muscles here. And a frozen shoulder is when you raise your shoulder to a certain point and you're asking these muscles to work harder to raise your arm, and at a certain point they cramp or spasm, which creates sharp pain, and then you can't raise your arm any further. The reason for this, for the muscle cramping, is because it's weak. It's when there's a lack of key life energy that a muscle will cramp, because it hasn't got the strength to contract normally, and instead it goes into this cramp or spasm, which is then really painful. Same thing in our intestines. If we get those really sharp pains in our intestines, same thing, the smooth muscle of the stomach or intestines are also spasming or cramping. And the energy flow in this part of the shoulder is looking at the Meridian System, which is used in shiatsu, acupuncture, acupressure, etc. So there are meridians running over the body, So for example, the lung meridian starts inside the shoulder here. It connects inwards to the lungs and then comes out at this point and then comes onto the front of the shoulder, comes down the arm and ends on the thumb. So this whole region is very much related to the lungs. So this is the kind of observation, and it's identical on both sides of the body. So in acupuncture, shiatsu, etc., the lung meridian, so I'm just trying to get this in the picture, the lung meridian is, you can stimulate the lung meridian to help the functioning of the lung. But also the lung meridian, the strength of the energy in the lung is expressing itself out along the body and is giving strength to these muscles and strength to the thumb. So if people develop a weak or painful thumb, nearly always that's because the lung energy has become low. If you're a little bit sensitive to qi, what you can do is feel the thumb, feel the fingers, just feel the amount of qi or life energy that you feel. And what you may well feel is the thumb is a lot weaker than the energy in the other parts of the fingers or hands. And because the lung energy is weaker, then the muscles are weaker, and then we may get it just feels weaker, colder. Cold is also a sign of a lack of qi, and we may be much more liable to strain it, or if that continues a long time, to get some joint pain or develop some arthritis in that thumb joint. So coming back to the shoulder, so here we've got the lung meridian, and behind it we've got the large intestine meridian coming down to the first finger. And so what I find with frozen shoulder is nearly always these meridians are very empty. Sometimes also triple heater, small intestine around the back have an effect as well, but especially these two. So in a sense, this is not a shoulder problem, it's a lung and large intestine problem. For our internal health, the outside of the body is reflecting what's happening inside the body, and what's happening inside the body is reflected on the outside of the body. So which is very useful, because then in shiatsu, acupressure, acupuncture, etc., we can do things on the outside of the body to have an effect inside. And we can also improve our health inside through our food, breathing, exercise, etc., which will then have a strengthening effect on the outside. So really, if we have a persistent shoulder problem, we can work on the shoulder, which I'm going to explain in a minute, but we can also work internally to work out why has the lung and large intestine energy become weak from an Oriental medicine point of view, and see what foods, activities, emotional work, etc. are going to strengthen those organs, and then that will also strengthen the shoulder. But what I wanted to say originally is that what amazes me is when people have a frozen shoulder, and I can feel that the qi is low, then through giving shiatsu, for example, starting off at lung 1 on the beginning of the lung meridian, and gradually working down the lung meridian. Also maybe doing some gentle stretching on the lung meridian afterwards. Doing some rubbing, maybe using some heat on there, or suggesting the person uses some heat themselves, like a hot water bottle or a salt pack. And then after the shiatsu treatment, then people can raise their arm higher. So within maybe 20, 30, 40 minutes, there's a change, and they can raise their arm higher, and some occasionally miraculously it clears up, but usually it takes a number of treatments. But after one treatment, there's a definite change. So my observation is that the qi flow in the meridians is one of the main things that gives muscular strength. So, of course, we know from a Western point of view, Western science point of view, that muscles get their strength from breaking down glucose, which produces energy, etc., etc., and that's all true. But you can be eating plenty of food and carbohydrates and have good blood sugar levels, and still your muscles can be really weak. So why is that? You know, if the energy just comes from breaking down food, if you're eating a good amount of food, why can you have weak muscles? You know, and that's because we, you know, as well as the physical understanding of health, we need to develop an energetic understanding of health, which is the gift of Oriental and, you know, some other traditional and modern medicines. So experiences like that really show me how key is essential for muscles to work well. Then the opposite condition can happen. So many people develop tension here, me included, often in our necks, shoulders, very often along the gallbladder meridian. If you try and look at everything's backwards on the video. If you make it, if you think of from your neck to the tip of your shoulder, if you go 1/3 out, right on the top of your shoulder, and press straight downwards, that is gallbladder 21. The only time you shouldn't do this is if you're pregnant, because there's a very small chance it may stimulate the uterus. But if you're not pregnant, then press down on that point. It's probably quite tense. So the other thing that can happen to muscles, one is that we have a lack of energy. The other is that the energy is too much, it becomes congested, and then that can create tension, chronic tension. So a lot of people, a lot of us, hold chronic tension in here, sometimes into the neck. Sometimes if you press along the back of the skull is your occipital, is the occiput, this is the back of the skull, just underneath in the back of your neck. Try pressing your thumbs up under there and see what it's like in there. In nearly everybody, it's pretty tense. So this is because the energy is congested, it's not flowing, and it builds up and then creates tension. So there we've got the opposite effect. And if this really comes up into the head, then people develop headaches, or more, strongly migraines, where there's not only a pain in the head, but there are other symptoms associated with the gallbladder and the liver, such as nausea and photophobia, because the eyes in Oriental medicine are very much connected with the liver, and the liver is sitting on top of the stomach, and so if the liver is very tense, then usually the stomach becomes very tense, and then we can develop nausea. So in this case, we've got too much energy. So in that case, what we want to do is get that energy to move, which we can do in a number of different ways. We can do it by stretching. So we might stretch this area open. We might use some percussion, either with the flat of your hand or with a loose wrist and a fist all over that area. Squeezing muscles is a good way for getting excess ki to come out of them. Heat is very good at relaxing muscles. We may lie down in a hot bath or have a hot shower and have that hot water on that place. Because tension here is usually it's in the gallbladder meridian. Occasionally it's in a different meridian, like small intestine or bladder, which is traveling through this area as well. Most often it's gallbladder. And actually the tension here is coming from tension here in the liver and gallbladder. So if we really want to relax this, then we need to relax this area. So also good to massage the liver. Also good to not eat really heavy, dense, salty foods. In macrobiotics, we would call yang foods, which can block and cause a lot of tension in the liver, such as meat, eggs, cheese, very salty foods. And to eat eat very light foods, and lots of vegetables and lightly cooked vegetables and salads and sour foods and light grains, like quinoa, long grain brown rice, etc. These all help the liver energy unwind. And you could also try something like a hot lemon and ginger drink. Squeeze half a lemon in a mug, some thin slices of root ginger, pour on hot water, Drink that first thing in the morning when you get up, when the liver energy is particularly active, and then you can have a few more during the day. Can help relax your liver somewhat. And then if we can get our liver relaxed, then this area will relax. Liver's also, I mean, Oriental medicine just goes in so many different directions. The liver is also in charge of our emotional expression. So if we're suppressing emotions, if we're deeply frustrated and emotionally withheld, that will also make the liver tight. Also inactivity. When we move and move our muscles, then our liver energy flows out around the body. So sitting, computing is a good way for building up tension here. And actually, if we get out and walk and move, then that can also help the energy move. So these are the kind of two, empty energy and kind of excess stuck energy are the two kind of conditions which create problems in the muscles. So some other examples. So back pain. Shame I haven't got somebody here. I need to have a kind of dummy or something to look at different regions of the back. Again, Oriental medicine is looking at relationship, and there's a strong relationship between the organs in the front of the body and the different regions of the back of the body. So if you have a back problem, most likely it's not just a back problem, it's also an organ problem. So, for example, if our lungs become weak, not only might we have weakness down our arms here and experience muscle weakness, thumb weakness, frozen shoulder, we may also get weak across this top part of the back, between the shoulder blades at the top. That area becomes weak, and then we may get some back pain there, or where the energy becomes weak, and sometimes our vertebrae can move a little bit, and then we get and then that can create a muscle strain or a tendon strain. And then sometimes if we move, it clicks back into place and we get some relief. If we have pain lower down between our shoulder blades at the back of the heart, just straight through from here to the back, then that's because the heart energy is low. You don't usually see an excess of heart energy. Sometimes there's tension on top. If we're feeling emotionally, psychologically that we need to protect our hearts. Then lower down, more through the middle back, very often this is an area of tension, because if we have tension here in our liver, stomach and diaphragm, and if you find your lower ribs and then press up and inside your ribs, or on the edge of the diaphragm, and you'll find out whether you're holding a lot of tension in your diaphragm or not. So you should be able to press, here are my lower ribs, you should be able to press in and then up and then forwards, so you're pressing on the inside of your rib cage. You can do that if your diaphragm is reasonably relaxed. Mine's not too bad today, sometimes it gets more tense. I could do with a bit of diaphragm massage to get it a bit looser. I've had quite a long day with a few stresses, so a bit of tension in there. So if we're holding a lot of tension in our diaphragm, liver, stomach, very often we get a band of tension across here. Then if we drop more down to the lower back, what's in front of the lower back? There's our intestines. There's also the kidneys in here. And if we drop down to the sacrum, in front of that we've got the bladder. So low back pain, very common, and nearly always it's because of low energy in that area, because the kidney bladder energy and sometimes the intestinal energy has become weak. So if we're whacking our kidney energy, the kidneys in Oriental medicine being the fundamental store of energy in the body, through overwork, through being under a lot of stress, feeling a lot of fear, anxiety, drinking a lot of coffee, alcohol, recreational drugs, and a lack of kind of minerals and solid grains, beans, maybe fish, a bit of animal food, etc. Foods which strengthen the kidneys, beans, well-cooked beans, minerals, sea vegetables, broth soups. Then our low back, if the kidney energy gets weak, the low back gets weak. And then we may just, I see some people who say they just rolled over in bed and their back went, or they just bent down to do up a shoelace and their back went. So, other people it's because they've lifted a heavy weight or something like that, but for some people they hardly do anything and their back goes. That's because already the back is really weak, and usually that's because the kidney and often the bladder and sometimes the intestinal energy is weak. So then again, we want to strengthen that area, and we can strengthen it through body work such as shiatsu, acupuncture, etc. We can strengthen it through heat. Again, hot water bottle, more effective than a hot water bottle is a salt pack, where we roast coarse sea salt in a dry frying pan until it starts popping. Carefully wrap it up in a little towel or a thick tea towel so none of it escapes to burn you, and then you put it on through clothing. If it's too hot, take it off, put another towel or something underneath, cover it over with a towel or blanket to keep the warmth in, and it gives a really nice deep heat. We could maybe also massage it ourselves, and then change our foods and steer away from what in macrobiotics we call more yin foods, coffee, tea, alcohol, sugary foods, tropical fruits, etc. And stock up on broth soups, and maybe some fish broth is very strengthening for the intestine, and long cooked beans and whole grains, seaweeds, etc. And then internally strengthen the kidney energy, and then that will help strengthen the lower back. So I've been talking for quite a while, so I'm just going to run through a couple of other problems. I think you've got the idea, so I'm going to run through a couple of other problems very quickly. Fibromyalgia, which seems to be quite common these days. It's a very common symptom with chronic fatigue, or ME, where basically the person is really depleted in energy. And fibromyalgia, this is where there's weakness and sometimes aching through all the muscles, or most of the muscles in the body. It's not just in one region like a shoulder or the back. So this really, a bit of a mystery to Western medicine. It's really happening because there's not enough ki in the whole muscular system. And then muscles ache, joints ache, and particularly when we use the muscles, then it creates more pain. So this often comes from quite a deep depletion in the body, especially the kidney energy, maybe the spleen energy, maybe lung energy. These are the organs which are particularly getting ki into the body. And so one needs an approach to gradually build up those internal energies. Too strong body work can make the pain worse. Too strong a shiatsu massage can make it worse. Just gentle body treatment, also infrared heat. People with fibromyalgia often find infrared heat really helps ease the pain. Cramps in the calves, cramps in the sole of the foot. Actually, both of those places also have the kidney and bladder meridians running through them, so they're a sign of those meridians being weak. So again, we need to get more energy in the kidney bladder. Tennis elbow, in my experience, is where there's a lack of energy. This time in the heart and small intestine meridians, and sometimes the triple heating meridian. Because when there's not enough energy, then, and we're asking, maybe we're playing tennis, maybe we're just gardening, maybe we're not doing very much at all, but we're asking that joint to work. So those muscles, tendons, ligaments, etc. are having to work hard, and there's not enough ki, then you will get pain. And possibly after that you will get inflammation as well. So again, if it's hot and inflamed, you might want to use cold, but if it's not, then heat can be good for getting ki in. And again, giving self-massage, or getting which we call do-in, or self-shiatsu, or acupressure could help. as well as getting body treatments. So I hope that gives you, a good kind of introduction to muscular system problems. I think there's certain areas that Oriental medicine is really strong in, and where the Western understanding is quite weak. Of course, with what seem like muscular problems, what Western medicine is very good at is understanding if there's some kind of structural problem or something physically going wrong, then Western medicine is very useful. But when it's just a muscular pain, really all they do is give painkillers. Maybe some physiotherapy may help, some specific exercises may be helpful. But the Oriental medicine understanding, I find, is very, very useful for understanding these muscular system problems as I've described, and it gives practical things that that people can do to help themselves. Okay, so I'm going to see if there are some questions. So Bianca, good to have you here, and Pema, and Dave, and Louise. Nice to see you. So the cause of golfer's elbow, is it food caused? So right now I can't remember if there's a difference between golfer's elbow and tennis elbow. I think it's the same thing, but maybe there's a slight difference because maybe it's a slightly different part of the elbow. But as I explained, if it's tennis elbow, which tend to get here, it's because of depleted energy, especially in the heart and the small intestine. So often the heart comes from a lack of attention to the heart, and that may be more for dietary reasons. It may be more for emotional reasons. If we ignore our hearts and our heart feelings, then our heart energy goes down. If we include our hearts in our awareness and our heart feelings, in our awareness and in our lives, and follow our heart feelings, then this increases the heart energy. If we eat a lot of heavy, dense animal foods, that can really make the heart very tight and the heart energy go down. Or if we eat the opposite, a lot of kind of alcohol, fruit juices, tropical fruits, sugary foods, etc., that also drains the heart energy, and then one may end up getting low heart energy. So with muscular problems that are caused by a particular action, there's two sides. If we're doing a certain action like playing golf or playing tennis, obviously we're putting bigger demand on a part of the body, so that is part of the cause. But why does one person get tennis elbow and somebody else doesn't? That's because of their internal condition. So then we want to look at changing their internal condition. So nice to have you here, Rita. Nice to be in touch, and good to have you here, Suzanne. And hi, Anne and Amal. Good to have you here again. Bianca, happy to answer your question. Any thoughts on cryotherapy, like cold showers, cold treatment on tight muscles and injuries? I have a few thoughts. Probably not. The final word. I think sometimes they can be useful and sometimes not. Sometimes it's assumed that when there are tight muscles and injuries that there's inflammation, and when there's inflammation what you really need is cold. But I think this is not always the case. So for example, if you sprain your knee or an ankle, the ankle swells up and gets hot, and that in some ways is an inflammatory response which the body uses when it's injured. So then the obvious thing seems to be to put cold on that hot swelling. But the reason for that hot swelling is that underneath the ki is very low. When we injure ourselves physically, we also injure the body's ki system. So the trouble with cold is, okay, well, it may reduce the swelling, which might make you feel a bit better, but it doesn't address the low ki underneath. So anytime a sprain, a muscle strain, a muscle injury, actually what we need to do is to get ki into that place. And a number of times, I found that I remember my landlady some years ago, when I lived in my last place, Buckyhead Farm, she'd sprained her knee, and so I gave her 20-minute treatment on the knee. And so what I did, it was really swollen, and she couldn't move it very much because it was so swollen. And so what I did was to find the points which felt really low in ki, and gently but firmly, not roughly, because I didn't want to increase. It's a vulnerable, where the ki's low, it's vulnerable. I just held those points for quite a long time, and also worked up the spleen meridian and down the spleen meridian. And she was surprised, and I was surprised that after 20 minutes the swelling had 50% gone down, and she had a lot more flexibility in the joint and less pain. So what that showed to me was that the swelling is a reaction to the low energy. It's like protection. It's like protecting the place that has low energy and is therefore vulnerable. So putting cold in that situation, I think, may reduce the swelling a little bit, but it's not helping the fundamental problem. What you want to do is get to the fundamental problem, which is the low ki, and increase the ki in those points. Same thing with a sprained ankle. Getting into those points, and at first you have to be careful, because at first they're the most sensitive points, because the ki is lowest, and so they're the most vulnerable. So often you have to just go in very gently to start off with, and start drawing in some ki. And then as the ki comes in, you find you can go a little bit deeper, and then that has a stronger effect at drawing in the ki. And then maybe you can go a little bit deeper. If you can't, then don't push it, because if you go too hard, then you could make it worse, because it's empty and vulnerable. But you just go as deep as you can, and just keep bringing ki in, and then you maybe move half a centimeter, and do the same again, and then move half a centimeter, and just find the next little sensitive point, especially in the hollows. Do the same again, and work the area, and then also work along the meridian as well, because if it's low here and we work the meridian, that's going to help bring more energy in as well. And also work the opposite side of the body, because if you've got an injury here, say on the small intestine meridian, if you work the small intestine meridian on this side, it will help increase the energy in this small intestine a little bit too. So that's my main feeling, really. I think sometimes cold can bring more ki into a muscle, because that's the body's reaction to cold. So I think sometimes it can work on that principle. But I think, as I said, I think one has to be careful, if there isn't inflammation, I would go, nearly always, I would go for using heat rather than cold. Okay, and then Kim, at just under 26 stone, your legs have all but stopped lifting, walking, and my knees have no cartilage. What foods would be best to heal and help me to lose weight and walk again? Okay, so that's quite a big question. In a lot of our classes, maybe you should check out a few of our classes. Unfortunately, online, I'm just coming to an end for the summer. In the autumn, I'll be starting more, or if you're close, then come to one of our classes here. What I would really suggest to help you lose weight is to eat a simple plant-based diet, and what I mean by that is maybe a third of your diet is whole grains, things like brown rice, millet, quinoa, barley, buckwheat, etc. You're using primarily vegetarian protein. Eating meat protein, meat, eggs, cheese, etc. very often puts on weight, whereas plant protein from things like beans, lentils, tofu, hummus generally don't. Eating a really good range of vegetables, eating sweet root vegetables like sweet potatoes, carrots, onions, parsnips, beetroot, and also eating plenty of greens, broccoli, spring greens, watercress, chicory, not chicory, etc., etc. Lots of greens. Just eat seeds every day to give yourself some natural oils, either raw or lightly roasted, pumpkin, sunflower, sesame seeds. Make yourself some soups. Good to put a bit of seaweed in your soup, like some dulse or kame, because they're very rich in minerals. You could make a miso soup because that's giving a nice flavouring and also has a lot of good minerals in. And then, if you want some sweetness, then get it from either fresh Northern European fruits, so not bananas, not oranges, pineapples, grapefruits, mangoes, avocados. Instead, apples, strawberries, pears, plums, apricots, etc. Use a little bit of oil in your cooking, use a little bit of salt in your cooking, but not too much, because if you overdo salt, then it can create water retention, which can add a lot to weight. Really try and avoid sugar, try and avoid white flour products, pastries, cakes, bread, etc., white rice, etc. So some people would describe that as quite a clean diet. You might, if you feel weak, then you feel you need a bit of animal food, then the best to eat would be white fish, cod, haddock, plaice, etc. So it's quite a kind of clean diet. The idea is you're giving your body all the nutrients it needs, but no more. So it starts withdrawing the nutrients which are stored in your body. Also, quite a bit of your weight may be liquid, and so it's important that you just maybe use very small amounts of salt in your cooking, but you don't overdo salt. That alone can sometimes stop eating salty foods. Sometimes people will lose even a couple of stone just in water. So I hope that gives you an idea. Joe, thank you for recommending that Kim, should pay a visit. It will work miracles on you as it did me. That's a great recommendation. I do really think that it's possible for you to lose quite a bit of your weight, which is really going to help. Really going to help your legs and your knees to help you get back on your feet. It's going to take a bit of work, it's going to take cooking. I don't know if you can cook or if you've got people around you who can cook, but you need to know what to cook. In the autumn we will have an online series of cooking classes again, so that could be really useful. Or if you or friend, partner, relative can come and do some cooking classes here, then that would be really good too. So I really wish you good luck, Kim. I'm sure that you can lose weight and get back on your feet. So please get in touch. I also give consultations, personal consultations online, if that would be a useful thing for you to really get some more detailed personal recommendations. And then, hi, Kual Zhang. Speak about vaccination, if appropriate. Yeah, so again, a big subject. So I could say a lot about them. Um, in so you know the basic principle of vaccination. You take a bacteria or usually a bacteria or a virus, and you denature it or take a little bit of it that's not going to cause an illness, and then you inject it in the body, and the body reacts against it, and then it learns to identify that virus or bacteria, so that if we get infected with that virus or bacteria, then our body can react quickly to it and not be overcome by it. So it sounds good in principle. However, there are some disadvantages. Sometimes it's the substances which accompany the vaccine. They use things called adjuvants, which often have been mercury in the past, and other quite toxic chemicals. And as with all drugs, there are side effects. And this is what angers me, that in the medical profession they say this vaccination is safe. What do they mean by safe? For me, they're lying. After a vaccination, a small number, many people will get no symptoms. Quite a proportion of people will get some symptoms, which they get over, and a very small number of people have really serious symptoms. Some people very rarely even die after vaccinations. So for me, that is not safe. The thinking is, if you save more life by giving vaccinations than you harm, then it's a good thing to give vaccinations. So an example of that is the flu vaccine, for example, given to old people in the UK and kind of European countries. So some years ago, so I'll tell you something else about vaccines in a minute. So they're very keen on giving the flu vaccination to old people, because old people in general are more susceptible to infections. That doesn't have to be the case. A lot depends on their health. But it is also because the body's systems are weakening, including the immune system. So they had a vaccine which, instead of being the normal kind of 70-80% effective, it was only about 3 to 5% effective. So it only protected 3 to 5% of the people who had the injection. And something like an extra 10 to 15,000 old people died that winter. So, that is an argument for vaccination. And personally, I'm not against vaccinations completely, but I think it should be free choice, and I think one has to carefully consider when and how much and who to decide whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. So in that case, you could argue that on average, there's more benefit from the flu vaccine for older people than there is harm. And okay, maybe it's a good thing. I think in some more tropical countries, again, vaccinations may well save a lot more lives than they harm. However, consider the situation of a baby in the first 2 years of life, who now is supposed to have a large number of vaccinations. And this is a baby whose immune system is undeveloped and whose body's defense system is weak. And these harmful substances are getting injected deep inside the body. And one really has to question whether that's a good idea or not. And quite possibly there are unwanted side effects in terms of we've had increase in allergies, including severe allergies and other health problems later on in life, which may well be coming from overuse of vaccination. So one might want to use one's discretion to weigh up, what are the chances of somebody, of your child getting a certain health problem, and weigh that against the possible disadvantages of the vaccine. Of course, Western medicine wants everybody to have the vaccine, so that one develops a herd immunity. But what makes me uncomfortable is that they lie about the safety of them in order to try and achieve that. And I think that is immoral, that they lie. Rather than telling the truth that they're not safe, but possibly they can argue overall they save more people than they harm. That would be a more honest approach. So no wonder people are suspicious of Western medicine. The other thing to consider is that in the 1800s, when the whole idea of vaccination was coming about, Pasteur, a French microbiologist who invented pasteurization and I think the first vaccination against smallpox. There were two ways of thinking. There was the germ theory. His was the germ theory that these illnesses are caused by germs, and if you can kill the germs or attack the germs, then you won't get ill. And then there were other scientists. For example, I think one of the leading ones was called Koch, and he was saying yes, but when there's an infectious illness goes around, it's not evenly distributed. People that are living in deprived areas and are on poor diets catch the infectious illness much more than people that live in richer areas and eat better diets. So his argument was to look at people's susceptibility to catching infections. Unfortunately, what happened in that whole argument was the germ theory won out, and how we can strengthen our immune system to make ourselves less susceptible to illness was really lost from Western medicine, including right up to the present day with the coronavirus. So all the efforts to counter the coronavirus are all about attacking the coronavirus through, hopefully getting vaccination, through hand washing, distancing, and obviously I strongly suggest you do those things to stop spreading it. But it's all directed at the virus. There has been no mention whatsoever of what individual people can do to strengthen their health and their immune system. So, for example, 90% of people who died from the coronavirus had comorbidities. They had other lung, heart problems, chronic heart problems, high blood pressure, diabetes, or were greatly overweight, all of which are immune suppressants. Diabetes is known to be an immune suppressant. So they could be saying, hey, this is the time to really improve your health. If you're borderline diabetic, then change your food, exercise, heal your diabetes, and you will also lessen your chance of catching the coronavirus. Wouldn't that be a useful thing to say? If you have high blood pressure is primarily a diet and lifestyle caused problem. So take some action. Start taking regular exercise, de-stress your life, start eating a plant-based diet. I've seen so many people bring their high blood pressure down, and not only will you have the benefits of bringing your high blood pressure down, you will also reduce the chances of you getting coronavirus seriously. This is the approach of strengthening your body and strengthening your health, which I think really works. My personal experiences before I got into macrobiotics 40 years ago, every couple of years flu, a week in bed, feeling really ill, another 2-3 weeks feeling moderately ill, gradually recovering. In the last 40 years, I haven't had flu once. Okay, maybe I've been a little bit fortunate, but for me it's more than that. It's because I've been eating a balanced plant-based diet and exercising and looking after my health. And that's something that we can all do. So we can all strengthen our immune system. And hey, let's heal some of these problems like high blood pressure, coronary heart disease, mild or beginning type 2 diabetes we can heal. Type 1, unfortunately, we can't. Let's heal some of these problems, and then we're going to be less susceptible to this pandemic. But this voice is not heard. It's not part of the mainstream thinking. If you have children, then as parents, it's your responsibility to work out what's best for your children. You may decide you want to give them all the vaccinations, or some of them, or none. Personally, I feel a valid option is to really improve and look after the health of your children well through diet, etc. And what I have observed is that then They may well get ill. There's nothing wrong with getting mild illnesses and fevers. It's a way the body adjusts, burns off excess and readjusts, but they're much less likely to get serious illnesses. So if you're prepared to really look after your children's health well, then that could be a valid choice. But I think to not vaccinate your children and not look after their health well is not a very responsible path to take. So, Col Yang, I hope that gives you some good information. It's also very interesting. If you're interested in this, really look at some of the individual. Start looking at the vaccinations individually to understand more about them. And there's if you do some searches, you'll find there's lots of pro arguments, and then there's a lot of arguments against. But just be careful, because some of them are a bit over the top. We need to keep it in balance. I received vaccinations when I was young. I'm not aware of it having done me any harm, any long-lasting harm. So we have to keep things in perspective. Amal, causes of restless legs. Yin or yang. I find that the most common kind of combination with restless legs is a lot of tension in the liver, and it's the liver that supplies the energy to the muscles. So when people have a lot of tension in their liver, then often they're very restless, and they can't stop moving, and they want to tap their feet and move, and have twitches because there's an excess of energy there, especially affecting areas where the energy is low. Because if the energy is solid, then these movements of energy can't have so much effect. So if people have low energy around the eyes because the kidney energy is low, they may be much more liable to develop leg twitches. If the kidney energy is low and the meridians and the kidney is low in the legs, then again that excess liver energy can have a bigger effect on the muscles. And so what's happening is that liver energy, so maybe many of you have experienced, you lie down and relax, and then suddenly your body kind of twitches. That's because that tension in your liver, that energy held in your liver, when you relax, can move, and then it goes through the muscles. And again, this is evidence of how Qi affects muscles. That energy is released through the muscles, and then your muscles contract. So excess liver Qi creates those bursts of energy that create restless legs. Can be made worse by the kidney energy being low. Yep, Joe, lots of questions about legs. Swollen lower legs due to water retention or edema. Generally an indication that there is weakness in the kidneys, possibly in the heart and the circulation. So one really you want to look at how to help the health of the kidneys and the heart. Okay, nice to have you here, Louise. Emily, sciatica. Yeah, so sciatica is pain which is going down the sciatic nerve, which is the big fat nerve that comes out of your lower lumbar vertebrae and behind the sacrum. It comes out from, I don't know, about 4 intervertebral joints, 4 nerves coming out of the spinal cord, and then that goes into the one sciatic nerve, which goes down through the buttock and then down the leg. And so sciatica is shooting pains down that nerve, generally because it's getting pinched just down at the base of the back. So really so you've got to look at what's happening in the lower back to understand the cause. So nearly always, as I was saying earlier with low back pain, the problem is low kidney bladder energy. Because when the ki is weak in the lower back, then the muscles are weak, and then it doesn't keep all the vertebrae and tendons and everything in the right place, and then they can move around, and then the sciatic nerve can get pinched, and then you get the pain down the leg. So, as I was saying, with muscular system problems, you can help externally and internally. Internally, you want to help strengthen your kidney bladder energy through food, rest, warmth. Externally, heat can be good. Shiatsu, acupressure. In my experience, shiatsu can be pretty helpful at getting more ki into the lower back. Also, doing some simple exercises to bring more ki into the lower back and to bring it into a good position, to stretch it. You can have a shiatsu therapist pick up the feet and then stretch the lower back. You need to know a little bit about what you're doing. If someone's lying flat, don't just pull the feet, because actually that will make the lower back scrunch up, or scrunch up that way. But if you pick the feet about 2 feet off the ground and then gently but firmly pull backwards, that will help lengthen that lower lumbar area. That could be a useful thing to do. The person themselves can bring their knees up to their chest and just wiggle again to really open up the lower back and pull the knees into the chest. If it's really bad, they won't be able to do that, but that can be useful. And then also shiatsu or acupressure, going down the lines in the legs where there's pain. And usually it's either the gallbladder meridian going down the side of the leg or the bladder meridian down the back of the leg. So kind of strangely, that often helps relieve quite a lot of the pain as well. So that's well worth doing as well. And then really, long term, strengthening the lower back. As I say, through food, through not damaging it, through rest, and through doing some simple stretching exercises and strengthening exercises for the lower back would be good too. Okay, Kim. So you've got back. So you live in London. So what you could do is there's a cookery school run by one of our graduates from here, and I can't quite remember the name of it right now. But if you Google Macrobiotic Cooking School London, it should come up. Run by a woman called Anna Friedman. So that could be a good place for you to go and get some cooking classes to, as I say, eat yourself or family, to learn how to cook simple plant-based food. It's what many people are changing to these days. So check that out. And again, if you want individual advice from me, I do work online. We could work online, and if you want some kind of thorough recommendations. Then Suzanne, what causes psoriasis in the middle of each palm and in palms of the hands? Okay, that's interesting. I don't think I've ever seen that myself. But the center of the palm relates strongly to the heart in Oriental medicine. Actually, we have a heart meridian which comes down to the little finger, and then we have a pericardium or heart protector meridian which comes down the center of the arm, and there's a very big point, 0.8 here, and then it comes down to the middle finger. And so the palm has a strong relationship with the heart. So if there's psoriasis, only or mostly in this place, then it suggests that really something is going on in the heart. Psoriasis, you also just want to check the diagnosis, because sometimes names of different skin problems are kind of used very roughly and not very accurately. But usually psoriasis is where there's thick skin which is shedding, which suggests skin is made out of protein, and it suggests that there's excess, and psoriasis in general in the body comes when people are eating too much protein and fats. To eat too much protein and fats, you basically need to be eating too many animal foods, because it's quite difficult to eat too much protein from eating plant foods. You can eat quite a lot of plant oils, but not as much as if you're eating dairy foods, etc. And generally with psoriasis, the liver is somewhat congested from eating too many of those foods. So I would look at those two organs. So check out the liver and the heart, and so you could check that out in facial diagnosis. The liver area showing up here, is this swollen? Does it have one or two strong lines? Is it red? Is the skin rough, spotty? And then check out the heart, looking at the center of the nose. Is this swollen, flaky, white heads, black heads, swollen veins, or a general redness in the face, suggesting a heart imbalance? And Christine, so lots of questions coming, which is great. Kim, you attended his week cookery course in beautiful Devon a few years ago. So was that with yes? So I thought your name was familiar. I'm sorry that I didn't click and realise that, Kim. Okay, so if you've done the cookery course, hopefully you still got the notes. So you've got to put that into practice and just eat, as I say, a simple plant-based diet. You can also eat a rich plant-based diet with lots of deep fried foods and fish and pastry and rich desserts and things like that. But really what you need to eat is a simple, keep your diet very simple in order to lose weight. I was just talking to someone who's done our first year here a few nights ago, who has been carrying extra weight for a long time, and she found that even when she eats a wide plant-based diet, but bits of chocolate and vegetarian cheese and things like this come in, she puts on weight, and when she eats more of a simple, clean plant-based diet, then she loses it. And recently she lost 2 stone through doing that. So Christine, scapula on your left side is stuck. Pain for a few days despite exercise and heat. Been cycling more lately, and hamstring on left side is also very tight. Could it be a meridian thing on the left side? Any ideas to release it and get rid of the pain? So so this is scapula. Acupuncture could be great. Shiatsu could be great. Shiatsu, I think, is often very good for muscular problems. Sometimes better than acupuncture, because shiatsu is also working more physically with the muscles as well. And I'm just trying to think of things you can do yourself. I mean, doing stretches are good at getting tension out. So you might find that this stretch, and holding this for several minutes, which is stretching the several muscles between the scapula and the spine, the trapezius and some other muscles under there. So try doing some, finding the stretch that seems to relieve it. You could try lying on your back on a tennis ball and just get the tennis ball right in the place where it feels stuck. Don't hurt yourself, but just have that pressure going in, and then move it up and down. And then your hamstring on your left side is also tight. Well, if you've been cycling more, muscles tend to tighten up when the energy is low, a bit like I was saying earlier on with cramps and so on. So rest, stretch it, just sitting on the floor, legs out straight, stretching down towards your feet. Keep stretching your hamstrings and resting, not overdoing it. You could also put heat on them, hot water bottle or salt pack. and they should start easing up. But if they're not, then yeah, get some body treatment. Kual Yang, so you come back. Abdication of personal responsibility for health due to weak-mindedness caused in the first place by bad diet. Well, I think there's a number of reasons why people abdicate their personal responsibility for their health. And you're saying maybe weak-minded, and maybe that's because of bad diet. I think there's some truth in that. I think a poor diet can weaken our will and our internal strength and our ability to do things to help ourselves. I think it's also cultural in that modern Western society, traditionally food was seen as a main tool of healing, and also fasting and exercising, etc. The ancient Greeks through the Middle Ages, they understood that food, lifestyle, fasting, compresses, teas, herbal teas, etc. All of people, there's more understanding of how we could heal ourselves, and modern Western medicine has had tremendous advantages, but it has also made people very lazy, or not only lazy, but just the knowledge of how we can, that connection, to understand that connection between food and exercise and what we do ourselves and our health has been lost. So I think, also culturally, a lot of people grow up in the culture not understanding that there are things which they can do to help themselves. And I think also on a wider scale, why are we here in this lifetime? I think it's to develop our awareness and our consciousness and our personal responsibility. And always there's people on all different levels. Some of us may be taking a lot of personal responsibility, and there will also always be some people that are taking very little responsibility, because this is one of the things that we're learning in life. And so we shouldn't look down on people that don't take personal responsibility. We should help them, become aware of what they can do and try and empower them. So Kim, replying to Kual, that's been my problem to achieve for 50 years, and hope was fading. Brought myself up on sandwiches and have never recovered. I'm trying now though at 63. Good for you, Kim. So keep going, because I'm sure that you can get some beneficial changes in losing weight. Maybe one thing you need is support. You need to be in touch with people who can give you support. Maybe going to a few of the cooking classes in London would be really helpful. Maybe being in touch with me or other people to help you keep going and to learn how to strengthen your will and your faith in your ability to heal yourself. I'm also 63, and so you still got a lot of time to help yourself. So Rita, calf cramps. So taking magnesium for calf cramps. So taking minerals does help with cramps. And so that leads to the idea that the cramps may be happening from lack of minerals. I don't know, sometimes that may be true, but I'm pretty sure that it's there's another mechanism that's happening. If we eat minerals, such as dissolving, I remember when I was young playing tennis, if people got cramps, you dissolve a teaspoonful of salt in a cup of warm water and then drink it, and that got rid of your cramp. If you do that, because salt is gives a strong stimulation to the kidney and bladder, if you have that sudden blast of salt or other minerals, you get a sudden blast of qi in your bladder and kidney meridians, which then of course helps the cramp along those meridians. So I think a lot of the action of it is through that. If one's getting cramps regularly, then what I've seen in people that regularly get cramps is that the qi in those meridians is chronically low, and what they need to do is to build up their kidney bladder qi. So it's not. I think I can't say always, but I think a lot of the time it's a low kidney bladder qi problem rather than a low magnesium problem. If you see what I mean. A lot of people in the modern Western world are low in minerals. It seems like a lot of people are suffering from a modern Western diet being too rich. Too many animal fats, too much dairy, too much sugar, too much richness, too much oil. But the strange thing is that often people are lacking in certain vitamins and minerals at the same time, partly because alcohol, sugar, a lot of caffeine depletes the body of minerals, but also because often people aren't eating mineral-rich foods, such as lots of greens, lots of vegetables, whole grains, sea vegetables, etc. So, I think that that can also be a cause. Amanda, nice to hear from you. So I need a shiatsu with you right now. Yeah, I would love to give you a shiatsu right now, Amanda. Difficult to get to Australia right now. Otherwise, I probably would. Suggests for long-time chronic asymptomatic E. coli bladder infestation. So I wonder if it's asymptomatic, if there's no symptoms, I wonder how one knows one has E. coli, presumably by having a urine test. I would, my guess would be that the bladder qi is pretty low, and therefore probably the kidney as well. Because what I've seen in women who frequently get bladder infections, that is the underlying kind of condition in the body. Also with the immune system, one can go into the kind of physical functions of the immune system. The white blood cells, how the lungs, the lining of the large intestine, create a barrier to fungi and microorganisms getting inside the body, etc. But also, as I said at the beginning, we're also working because we have life energy, chi, ki running through the body, which does all, which we need for every single function in the body, including the immune system. So what I see is where the qi is low, infections get in. If a person's lungs are weak with low qi, they're more likely to pick up on a lung infection. If people have low bladder qi, people are more likely to get a bladder infection. If people have a weakness in their intestine, they're more likely to get an intestinal infection. Some people develop an infection in their heart, which can be extremely dangerous. Why? Why does it go to the heart? Why do sometimes people get a tooth infection, which gets into the blood? And why does it go to the heart rather than a different organ? Because the heart qi is low. So to me it sounds like the bladder qi needs to be strengthened. And Suzanne, a friend has it, and the school did it as well. Sorry, I don't quite understand that. Great, Kimberly, thank you. Whole Food Harmony. Yep, there's Anna, who runs cooking classes in London, which might be much easier for you to get to. So Kim, you're saying thank you. Yes, go for it. Quell. So you're asking about your niece developing scoliosis. Helicopter parenting. I haven't heard of helicopter parenting. Maybe you could explain a little bit more. She also had a difficult relationship with food since young. So with scoliosis, why does the spine collapse? It's because there's not enough ki in the spine to hold it up. Again, Western medicine is so good at certain things, but functional problems it's very poor at. Why do people develop headaches? Why does the spine collapse? When they can't find a physical or chemical reason, they don't know. So they don't understand what causes scoliosis. The cause of scoliosis is that there's a lack of ki in the spine. Mostly that goes along with weak lung and large intestine energy, sometimes heart and small intestine. If you're into meridians and things, you might think bladder and kidney, because in Oriental medicine the bladder ki supports the spine. But I've seen people with really low bladder ki and they haven't developed scoliosis, and I've seen quite a lot of people with scoliosis, and what I've seen is always weak lung, large intestine, and often heart, small intestine. So as I was saying with back pain, when this energy is weak, then that upper part of the back is weak, and then you get a bend in that part of the back. When the small, large intestine is weak, then this part of the spine is weak, and you get a bend in that part of the back. And what especially weakens lung, large intestine? Tons of sugar, soft drinks, tropical fruits, sweets, cakes, and a lack of whole foods, minerals, whole grains, whole vegetables, root vegetables, etc. So, a common childhood diet. And I feel for her, because I've seen other people that, sometimes Western medicine is savage. That to cut the back open and put rods in there or to fuse vertebrae and things is a brutal thing to do. I have worked on adults and managed to get some straightening of their spines, and often relieve some pain and deformity and difficulty in the muscles. I've seen a few teenagers who, through dietary change, have been able to strengthen their spines and either stabilize it so it doesn't get worse or get a bit of improvement. So I would really highly recommend getting some. Of course, her parents have to be into it, the family has to be into it, but I would highly recommend getting some really good recommendations from me or from someone else on how to really strengthen her internal health and really help her spine. And really good chance that she can stabilize it or get a bit of improvement and avoid having to have further Western treatments. So Cree, nice to hear from you. Quell, thank you. Yeah, some health problems are tough. Multiple sclerosis. Things have gone a long way, difficult to turn around. Other problems, I think a natural approach can be really helpful, and scoliosis is one of those. And I have so much sympathy for some of the people I've seen who've had multiple operations on their back and metal rods put in and taken out and long